Earlier this season, we looked at the devastating effects that American-made cluster bombs are having on the civilian populations in Yemen. But we wanted to take a look at the larger picture of unexploded munitions in other parts of the world. So we went to Southeast Asia, where millions of these controversial weapons are still taking lives every day.
I just crossed the Thai-Burmese border. I'm in Kurdistan State. I'm embedded with the KNLA, that's the Kurdistan National Liberation Army.
These rebels are locked in a decades-long civil war with the Burmese government. Both sides have used one of the most primitive but deadly kinds of indiscriminate weapons, landmines.
I asked the soldiers about landmines, and they produced this. This is a homemade landmine that they carry with them. This little wooden part acts as a pressure plate. When somebody steps on it, this thing goes boom.
But the problem with these homemade weapons and the military-grade explosives that the Burmese government is planting is that it's often the civilian population who sees their impact. In nearby villages, we met some of these civilian victims. These weapons are often used in areas where the local people lack the proper resources to treat their condition. So for victims in Burma, that often means traveling to neighboring Thailand just to get help. Mamia Win was 18 when she triggered a landmine. The Hapa-On Clinic has provided physical therapy to hundreds of landmine victims in the last decade. Many of them show up with crude, makeshift prosthetics that they've constructed on their own.
These are homemade prosthetics.
Before they receive our service, they have this, they make by themselves.
And this is just a rod and a ball bearing. Crazy.
These limbs are in constant demand because, as Dr. Yeshua Moser explained to us, the threat from unexploded ordnance can last for decades after a conflict is over.
Anti-personnel mines aren't something that spoils like milk. Because of the extraordinary number of civilians that were injured and killed by these things in peacetime, it's what we call a weapon of mass destruction in slow motion.
It brings us to Burma's neighbor, right next door. You have Laos, slightly different problem, but still a very deadly problem, right?
Yes. In Laos, you have much more of a cluster munition problem due to the aerial bombing they experienced during the war.
That war was the Vietnam War, and the country dropping those deadly weapons was the United States. In an effort to halt enemy supply lines that ran through Laos, the U.S. began carpet bombing this small country using a highly controversial weapon known as a cluster bomb, which breaks apart midair into dozens of smaller explosives. The problem is not all of these bomblets actually explode, essentially making them landmines dropped from the sky.
I'm in Savannakhet Province, Laos. This area is one of the most heavily bombed regions in the world. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. dropped more ordnance on this teeny country than they did on all of the Axis powers in World War II. And this has left millions of unexploded ordnance in the ground here in Laos.
Yesterday, there was an accident in a bow. A local person blew off his hand.
Nick Torbay runs the Laos branch of HALO, an organization that has cleared tens of thousands of explosives in Laos. He explained to us how cluster munitions work.
A cluster munition is designed to explode on impact, so it's designed like an artillery shell or a bomb. It's designed to hit the ground, go bang, but a fairly large number didn't explode. The BLU-26, they were dropped in containers containing hundreds of these in an individual bomb that would break up in the sky, and hundreds of these would fall towards the ground, spinning in the air, and then impact on landing. You can see the small little ball bearings within it. The idea is these ball bearings spread out and become a fragmentation designed to kill people.
Is there a render safe procedure for these?
No, for cluster munitions, you can't really render them safe. You can use, explosive effects to make them explode, but in a less violent way.
Nick took us out on one of his group's missions to the remote village of Nahua Nam. For more than 40 years, Nahua Nam has dealt with leftover cluster munitions surrounding their village.
Halo actually has to set up a base camp from which to operate. They've done that in this village. This tent behind us is where they'll live for the next 3 weeks.
But before we could even begin our search, a local elder pointed us to an armed American bomblet, which was just a few hundred feet from camp.
He's leading us to where he thinks he found it right now. How did you find this? Do you know people who have been hurt by these before?
ล้านเฮานี่มันเลี้ยงควายมันก็เห็นระเบิดเห็นรถเลยเอาแต่ย้ายบ่ได้ว่าจะเอาลงอันนี้ระเบิดก่อนเลย
We watched as Halo prepared a safe detonation procedure for this unexploded ordnance, just paces from the village.
So basically what's happening now is, as you can see, there's farmers, there's villagers, there's village right over there. So Davide's spreading his team out, deploying them to warn off people that there's about to be an explosion.
ถ้าปลอดภัยรักษาความปลอดภัยไว้เด้อจะได้หมดวิทยุต่อแก็บรับทราบบ่เปลี่ยน
This container has the blasting caps in them. Once he takes that blasting cap, he puts it right into the top of this explosive. It's placed down in the hole and explodes that bomb, hopefully in a safe manner.
ถ้าฟังเสียงนับเด้อ 3 2 1 จุดยามแต่ละจุดเข้ามาได้เด้อเข้ามาจุดยิงเด้อการทำลายของเฮาสำเร็จแล้วเดี๋ยวนี้
There's nothing left of it except for these little ball bearings, which are actually still hot from the explosion. These are what are designed to shred flesh right here.
Where one bomblet is found, there's almost always more nearby. So the team has to search the entire area.
Their job is to map contamination. The team leader, Vandra, set out a small 50 by 50 meter box, and they all work in towards the center, doing a sweep of the area.
Try your knee.
Oh, there's another one. It's the same type of munition, another BLU-26. Here's another one.
And it isn't just cluster bombs. The area is littered with unexploded ordnance of all types.
3 2 1 ระเบิด
And these hidden bombs are so pervasive that a new generation has had to learn to spot them.
Where the load was, where the vehicle was.
They're leading us to it right now. Oh yeah, there it is, right there. Do you know where these came from?
หลานก็บ่ฮู้จักตอนนั้นหลานบ่ยังบ่ทันเกิด
This is why explosives like landmines and cluster munitions are so dangerous. Because decades after a conflict ends, the original victims, as well as their children and grandchildren, are still paying a price.
1964และมียนต์หลายชนิดออกจากบ้านแล้วไปอยู่ป่าขุดคุ้มลี้ไผลี้มักแตกมักบ่มที่พวกกันสหรัฐมาทิ่มมาทิ่มมากวาดล้างบ่มีวันลืมยังเข็ดแค้นอยู่เสมอ
Even though HALO is working constantly to neutralize these bombs, there's still millions more. And there will continue to be millions more to neutralize around the world because American-made cluster munitions are still being dropped today. Despite international calls to stop using these weapons, the U.S. has used them in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and has armed Saudi Arabia with the bombs it's used on highly populated areas in Yemen. For more than 2 decades, Senator Patrick Leahy has crusaded against the use of these indiscriminate explosives.
You buy these for $3 or $4. This much pressure would have taken my arm, and in this case, most of my head off.
Senator Leahy told us the U.S. needs to take a leadership role in banning these weapons.
If we're not willing to give up these things, isn't it easier for a country that has nowhere near our power to say, wait a minute, the most powerful nation on earth won't do it? Why should we? We have some in the Pentagon who think that you should never limit any weapon. I mean, there are those after World War I who said, well, maybe we shouldn't ban poison gas. We might need it at some point. No. It was a human rights thing to get rid of it, and we didn't need it. The war is over. Landmines are still there. How many generations are going to continue to die because they were used?